Chapter 2. "So what do we do now?" Georgia demanded. "We feed the cats and go to bed," Annie said. "Is that all?" "Well, the cats do need to be fed." There were 8 cats living in the house, one for each of us. Anthrax, Dandruff, Greatorex, Jaguar, Minx, Precious, Rambunctious, and Zither. Each was gray and white, and it was always hard for anyone other than us to tell them apart. The cats could, of course, tell all of us apart, too. "But aren't we going to do anything?" Georgia insisted. "You know, about Mommy and Daddy disappearing? The best thing we can do right now is take care of the cats and take care of ourselves. In the light of day, we'll see things more clearly." And we'd been able to see things a lot more clearly even then if the lights hadn't gone out right after we finished feeding the cats in the cat room. The cat room was like our drawing room, only for cats. "Oh no," Zinnia cried out. "Whatever bad person took Mommy and Daddy turned out the power. Something awful is about to happen." Now, Dorinda soothed. "Annie," she directed, "call the electric company and find out what's going on. It's what Daddy would do." So Annie stumbled her way back to the drawing room where, with the light from the fire, she could still make out the phone. Annie phoned information and waited to be connected to the electric company. When we heard her speak, her voice was deeper than usual. "Hello," she cleared her throat. "This is Robert Wheat at 888 Middle Way, and I was wondering if you could tell me, is it just my power that's out, or is this a citywide problem?" She paused. "Ah, yes, jolly good. Thanks so much. You chaps do great work." And she hung up. "Well," Georgia said, "what's going on?" "It started snowing again." Annie was still speaking in her faux daddy voice and had to make herself stop. "And they say there must have been too much ice on the line somewhere and one of them came down. They should have it fixed by morning." She forced a smile. "I don't think we'll freeze by then if we put extra blankets on." "Thank goodness," Petal said, "that this is affecting everyone and not just us. I was sure it was the work of the axe murderer." "May I ask you a question?" Rebecca said to Annie. "Of course. Why didn't you say you were Lucy Wheat? It would have been easier to impersonate Mommy, I should think." "Huh," Annie said. "I don't know. I guess I never thought to impersonate anyone other than Daddy." "And what," Rebecca pressed, "was all that stuff about jolly good and you chaps? Daddy never talks that way. You made him sound British." "Well, but he could be British, couldn't he? I mean, the electric company doesn't know where we come from." Rebecca humphed. She did not find the answer satisfying, but we were all tired by then. "It is strange. You would think that enormous amounts of fear, the kind we've been through, would have been enough to keep us awake for weeks, but human beings are funny things, and we Sisters 8 are nothing if not human. We yawned as a group, for, in the end, fear had worn us out." Annie took down the twin candelabras from the mantel over the fireplace and handed one to Dorinda. Then the two of them lit the 3 candles, and each from the dwindling fire that still burned. We made our way to bed, following behind them to our rooms on the floor above. Annie and Dorinda supervised as we brushed our teeth and hair, then they did their own while we waited. Usually, we slept in 2 rooms separated by a single large bathroom. In one room slept the 4 oldest and the other the youngest, but not on that night. Annie was worried that Petal and Zinnia would be too worried, Rebecca would insult their worries, and Marcia, the oldest in that room, wouldn't be able to control the situation. So she made a minor switch. "Dorinda," she said, "you sleep with the 3 youngest, and I'll take Marcia in with us." So that's what we did. And, in a way, as Annie and Dorinda made their rounds from bed to bed, tucking each of us in with a kiss by the light cast from the candelabras, this minor switch was comforting. At least someone, Annie, was taking charge. But as you can imagine, it was all very confusing for the cats. It took some time for Dandruff and Minx to find the right beds to sleep at the bottom of. But once they did, we were out. We were all out, like lights. We awoke to the rumble of empty stomachs and the cats grumbling for more food. We awoke to a world filled with light. The power had come back on. "Rise and shine," Annie said as she bustled around the bedrooms. We put on our robes and brushed our teeth, feeling as though we'd hardly slept at all. Then we made our way downstairs to the smell of nothing. On Christmas Day and New Year's Day mornings, Mommy always made big stacks of chocolate chip pancakes for us. This year, since we were supposed to be celebrating both holidays at once, we'd all secretly been expecting a double dose of the good stuff. But there was to be none of that. Or at least, none of that made by Mommy. "How are we going to eat?" Petal asked, puzzled. "We're going to do it ourselves, of course," Annie said. Petal remained puzzled, as though Annie were speaking British again. "Okay," Annie announced, "here's what we're going to do. We'll gather whatever ingredients we think go into the pancakes and do our best. Actually, Dorinda said timidly, I've watched Mommy closely when she's made them. I'm pretty sure I can do it if Jackie helps me. I can do that, Jackie said gamely. Good, Annie nodded. Georgia and Rebecca, see to the cats. You mean feed them? Georgia asked. Feed them, of course, Annie said. She paused and then added with a meaningful sniff of the air. Also, clean the litter boxes. But Mommy always does that, Rebecca objected. Well, Annie said, Mommy is not here right now, is she? At least we don't have to worry about the plants, Dorinda put in. It was true. Mommy had invented a flying watering can. It moved through the house on metal runners attached to the ceiling, stopping over each plant to give it a healthy sprinkle. Unfortunately, sometimes the flying watering can malfunctioned, sprinkling the floor, which we would then have to clean up, or even sometimes sprinkling a person. And what are you going to do, George demanded of Annie, while we're doing all of that? I'll be planning, Annie said importantly. Dorinda, Jackie, Georgia, and Rebecca are doing breakfast and cat detail, and after we eat, Marcia, Petal, Zinnia, and myself will shovel the walk so the mail person can get through tomorrow. Petal and Zinnia can even build snow people as we go to take their minds off things, and I'll get more wood for the fire. So that's what we did, at Annie's bidding. We went off to prepare breakfast, feed cats, and clean litter boxes. As it turned out, to all of our wonder-filled surprise, Dorinda was a fantastic cook, with Jackie's help, of course. Yummy, Zinnia pronounced, surrounding her pancakes with maple syrup as we sat down to our Christmas, New Year's morning breakfast, fresh juice filling our glasses. We were 8 at a table that usually sat 10. It was hard to ignore those 2 empty chairs. At last, Georgia spoke the words we were all thinking. Well, she spoke them because we'd put her up to it. While Annie was off getting the wood, we'd had a little conference and elected Georgia our spokesperson. Okay, maybe she volunteered. Annie, Georgia said, I've been wondering, why didn't you call the cops right away last night? Her words sounded innocent enough, and yet there was something about her tone that smacked of accusation. Annie looked surprised by the question as well as the tone. It was New Year's Eve, she said, late, and there was lots of snow. We live at the top of a hill. Do you think they'd have been in a hurry to rush out here? You've seen cop stories on TV. If we phoned them, they'd tell us we need to wait at least 24 hours to file a missing persons report. Then why not call them now, Georgia prompted. Because 24 hours haven't passed. Annie speared another bite of pancake. It hasn't even been 12 hours yet. She popped the pancake bite into her mouth. But Georgia wouldn't let up. Then what about tonight at exactly 10 when it's been 24 hours? Will you call then? No, Annie said simply. But why ever not, Jackie put in. Even our peacekeeper couldn't help but be confused by Annie's behavior. Because, said Annie evenly, they couldn't do anything. And whatever they might do would only make a muddle of things. I don't think any of us is following you, Marcia said. Okay then, it's like this, Annie said, setting down her fork. We don't know what happened to Mommy and Daddy, correct? Sevenheads nodded. But we did get that note, Annie went on. Someone left it there. It's not a ransom note. It's not a threatening note. But it does tell us what to do if we want to find out what happened to our parents. We must discover our own powers and our own gifts. And that's what I propose we do. But how will we do that? Rebecca asked. And why can't the police be looking for Mommy and Daddy while we're... Rebecca's eyes filled with horror. Oh no, the reason you're not calling them is that you're certain Mommy and Daddy are... dead. Don't be daft, Annie said crossly. Here's the situation. Our mother disappeared from a kitchen where she went to make eggnog. Our father disappeared from a woodshed. Now, we know our parents better than anyone in the world. On the other hand, the cops know nothing of our parents. Do you really think they can do better than we can? It made sense to us. And there's another thing, Annie said, which is, Georgia prompted, if we tell the cops, they'll split us up. Then not only will we not have parents, we won't even have each other anymore. How do you know that? Georgia asked. Simple logic, Annie said. If we call the cops, they certainly won't let us go on living here without a grown-up. First, they'll call our relatives. We thought about our relatives. Grandparents on different continents. Aunt Martha, who'd never had children. Uncle George, who'd never liked children. And when we saw them, all of them said we were too loud. None of them will take us, Annie went on. They might not even take any of us. And what do you think the chances are that they'll find a foster home that will take on 8 kids at once? It was a question with an obvious negative answer. Right, Annie said. If we called the cops, we'd be split up by nightfall. And how long would that go on? Petal asked, clearly worried. Forever, Annie said, if they don't find Mommy and Daddy. Jackie was thinking. So then we have to pretend everything is fine here, that there are adults still living in the house, until we can figure out what happened to Mommy and Daddy? Exactly, Annie said. We could all see, even Georgia could see, that she was right. We'd eaten all we could eat at breakfast, and we're still digesting the news that we'd be living without adult supervision for an indefinite time when we noticed what a mess the kitchen was. Dorinda had made a wonderful breakfast with Jackie's help, as good as Mommy would have made, but there were dirty dishes and a dirty griddle, and pancake batter was splattered all over the counters, cabinets, and floor. Right then, Annie said, while Marcia, Petal, Zinnia, and I dressed to tackle shoveling the walk, Georgia and Rebecca can clean up the kitchen. That's not fair, Georgia said. We cleaned the litter boxes. Yes, Annie said, but Dorinda and Jackie made breakfast. It wouldn't be fair to ask them to clean it up, too. Besides, before you know it, we'll be needing lunch, and then dinner. Dorinda will have to see to that as well. We all thought about that, and even Georgia had to admit it was fair. Before I become a scullery maid, Georgia said, is it possible to ask a question? Of course, Annie said. Who died and left you boss? Hopefully no one died, Annie said, but someone does need to take charge of organizing everyone around here. Everything around here, and I am the oldest. Only by a minute, George objected. It was true. We'd been each born a minute apart, meaning that Annie was older than Dorinda by only a single minute, and older than the youngest of us, Zinnia, by only a whopping 7. If fate had been different, with just a 2-minute switch, Georgia might have been the oldest, with Annie third in the line. It was a time technicality that regularly annoyed Georgia. Fine then, Annie paused and then spoke meaningfully. Would you like the job? For a moment, we all thought Georgia might rise to the bait, and who knew what might happen then, or what Annie might do. But Georgia backed down with a muttered, I still don't see why you got to tell everyone to do. And how do you think we'll pull this off anyway? We're 8, Annie said. We could do anything. You're not 8, Rebecca said. None of us are. Close enough, Annie said. It's now officially 2008. On August 8th, we'll be 8. This is our 8th year on the planet. If people asked what year we were born, we'd say 2000, and they'd do the math and come up with 8. So why quibble? Can I ask a question? Zinnia's voice was timid. Of course, Annie said gently. It's just this, Zinnia said. It's what you said before about Dorinda making lunch and then dinner. There's plenty of food in the house now. This was true. Mommy had done what she always referred to as a big shop when we arrived at home from Utah. We probably had enough food to last us a week or two. But, Zinnia continued, if this goes on, what will we do when we run out of supplies? Annie shrugged. I suppose one of us will have to learn how to drive. You never said before, Georgia said testily, how long do we have to pull this off? Annie shrugged again. As long as it takes.